The summer sun blazed over the coastal town of Brightwater, casting golden light across the harbor where expensive yachts bobbed gently in their slips. At the end of the main pier stood the Anchor's Rest, a weathered seafood restaurant that had served the community for 3 generations. Inside, the lunch crowd was thinning out. 12-year-old Marcus Chen sat alone in a corner booth, his dark eyes fixed on a dog-eared paperback about deep-sea exploration. His father had dropped him off an hour ago with instructions to wait while he finished some business in town. Marcus didn't mind. He loved this place, with its smell of salt air and fried fish, the way the floorboards creaked under his sneakers. At a nearby table, 3 teenagers lounged with an air of ownership. The leader was Brett Holloway, 17, with sun-bleached hair and a permanent sneer. His father owned half the commercial real estate in Brightwater, and Brett had learned early that money meant power. "Hey, kid," Brett called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "You lost. The library's 3 blocks that way." Marcus glanced up briefly, then returned to his book. He'd dealt with guys like Brett before, back in Seattle, before his family moved here last month. Ignoring them usually worked, but Brett wasn't used to being ignored. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, and sauntered over to Marcus's booth. His 2 friends followed, smirking. "I'm talking to you," Brett said, snatching the book from Marcus's hands. "What's a kid like you doing here anyway? This place is for locals." "I'm just reading," Marcus said quietly, reaching for his book. "Can I have that back?" Brett held it out of reach, then tossed it to one of his friends. "You don't belong here. Why don't you take your little book and find somewhere else to sit?" The restaurant had gone quiet. A few customers watched uncomfortably, but no one intervened. The single waitress on duty, an older woman named Dorothy, started toward them but hesitated. Knowing Brett's family, Marcus stood up slowly. He was small for his age, barely reaching Brett's shoulder. "I'm not bothering anyone. I'm just waiting for my dad." "Your dad?" Brett laughed. "What's he do, deliver takeout?" His friends joined in the laughter. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, but he said nothing. He simply held out his hand for his book. That's when Brett made his mistake. Perhaps it was the perceived challenge in Marcus's silence, or simply the cruelty that came naturally to him. He drew back his hand and slapped Marcus hard across the face, the sound sharp and ugly in the quiet restaurant. Marcus stumbled backward, his hand flying to his reddening cheek. The book tumbled to the floor. "Next time, show some respect when your betters are talking to you," Brett said. The front door opened. A man entered, Asian, in his early 40s, wearing an expensive charcoal suit despite the heat. His face was weathered but handsome, and his eyes were the same dark brown as Marcus's. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who had never needed to prove himself. David Chen took in the scene instantly, his son's reddened face, the teenager standing over him, the book on the floor. His expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. "Marcus," he said calmly. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dad," Marcus said, though his voice shook slightly. David turned his attention to Brett, his gaze level and assessing. "You put your hands on my son." Brett, emboldened by his father's name and his own size, puffed out his chest. He needed to learn some manners. "Maybe you should teach him not to take up space where he doesn't belong." "I see." David pulled out his phone, pressed a single number. "Jerry. It's me. I'm at the Anchor's Rest. Could you come down here, please? 5 minutes. Thank you." He pocketed the phone and turned back to Brett. "What's your name?" "Brett Holloway. My dad owns the Holloway properties. He knows everyone important in this town." "Does he?" David said, and there was something in his tone that made Dorothy, the waitress, go very still. the next 5 minutes passed in uncomfortable silence. David stood near his son, occasionally checking the mark on Marcus's face, with a gentle touch that contrasted sharply with his otherwise impassive demeanor. Brett and his friends shifted uneasily, sensing something they couldn't quite identify. A black Mercedes pulled up outside. 3 men in suits entered the restaurant, led by a tall man with silver hair and a face like carved granite. He headed straight for David Chen. "Mr. Chen," he said respectfully. "Is there a problem?" Brett's eyes widened. Jerry Malone was known in Brightwater. He managed the Chen family's extensive holdings in the region. The shipping company, the real estate portfolio, the construction contracts. The Chen name appeared on half the permits in town, though few people had ever met David Chen himself. He preferred it that way. "This young man assaulted my son," David said simply. "I'd like to know who his father is." "Dad." Brett's voice cracked. "Dad's Richard Holloway, Holloway Properties." David nodded to Jerry, who made a quick phone call. Within minutes, Richard Holloway burst through the door, his face already pale. He'd been at his office when Jerry Malone's assistant called. The message had been brief: "Mr. Chen wants to speak with you about your son." The anchors rest. "Now." "Mr. Chen," Richard said, slightly breathless. "I don't. What's this about?" David gestured to Marcus. "Your son struck mine across the face. Here, in front of witnesses. He seems to believe his family name gives him the right to assault children." Richard's face went from pale to ashen. He turned to Brett, whose bravado had completely evaporated. "You did what?" "He was just sitting there," Brett mumbled. "I didn't know." "You didn't know." Richard's voice was strangled. He turned back to David, and everyone in the restaurant could see the fear in his eyes. "Mr. Chen, I apologize." "Profusely." "Brett will apologize as well." "Right now." Brett mumbled something that might have been an apology, staring at his shoes. "Look at him," David said quietly. The command in his voice was unmistakable. Brett raised his eyes to Marcus, and the apology he gave this time was clearer, tinged with genuine fear. David studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Richard. "Your son hurt mine because he thought he could. Because your name, your money, made him untouchable." He paused. "I want you to understand something. Money doesn't make you powerful. It makes you comfortable. Power is something else entirely." Richard nodded frantically. "Of course. Brett will be punished. I'll make sure." David held up a hand. "I'm not interested in punishment. I'm interested in understanding." He looked at Brett. "Why did you hit him?" Brett struggled to answer, shame and confusion warring on his face. I don't know. Because I could." "Because you thought there would be no consequences," David corrected gently. "Because you've learned that your family name protects you." He turned to Richard. "That's on you." The silence stretched. Finally, David said, "I'm not going to destroy your business, Mr. Holloway. I'm not going to use my connections to drive you out of town. Do you know why?" Richard shook his head, not trusting his voice. "Because my son is watching. And I want him to learn that power should be used to protect, not to punish. That having the ability to hurt someone doesn't mean you should." He looked at Marcus. "Are you all right with that?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, Dad." David addressed Brett directly now. "You're going to spend the rest of your summer volunteering. Jerry will arrange for you to work at the youth center downtown, helping kids from difficult situations. You'll do this because you need to understand that not everyone has your advantages. That vulnerability isn't weakness, and that every person you meet deserves dignity. He glanced at Richard. Your father will ensure you follow through. Because if he doesn't, then I'll reconsider my decision about being merciful. Yes, sir, Brett whispered. David nodded to Jerry, who escorted the Holloways out. When they were gone, the restaurant seemed to breathe again. Conversations resumed, though everyone was still processing what they'd witnessed. Dorothy brought Marcus a fresh milkshake, on the house. David sat down across from his son, picking up the fallen book and smoothing its pages. Dad, Marcus said quietly. Why didn't you? I mean, you could have what? Ruined his family. Had him arrested. David shook his head. Power isn't about what you can do, Marcus. It's about what you choose to do. And that choice defines who you are. But he hurt me. I know. David's voice softened. And if I thought he was truly dangerous, or that mercy would teach him the wrong lesson, my response would be different. But he's a scared kid who's been given too much privilege and not enough wisdom. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show restraint. Marcus absorbed this, his hand still touching his cheek where the slap had landed. What if he doesn't change? Then he'll face real consequences eventually. The world has a way of teaching hard lessons to those who refuse to learn them gently. David smiled slightly. But I think he will change. Fear can be a beginning, if it leads to understanding. They finished lunch together, talking about Marcus's book, about the diving expedition it described. Outside, the harbor sparkled in the afternoon light. Brett Holloway would indeed spend his summer at the youth center, and the experience would alter the trajectory of his life. Richard Holloway would become more involved in his son's development, grateful for the second chance David Chen had granted them both, and Marcus Chen would carry the lesson with him always. That true strength lies not in domination, but in the choice to be kind when you have every reason to be cruel, to build up when you have the power to tear down, to see the humanity in everyone, even those who fail to see it in you. Years later, when Marcus had his own son, he would tell him this story. And he would say, remember, power without wisdom is just another form of weakness. It's the choices we make when no one can stop us that reveal who we really are. Hello everyone. If you are enjoying this video and finding it helpful, don't forget to support our channel. Please subscribe to our channel, press the like button, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. We regularly upload amazing, informative, and entertaining content just for you. Your support means a lot to us and motivates us to bring even better content in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and welcome to our growing community.